One last feature that I mentioned, I neglected to mention regarding strings. We're going to be asked to slice out a portion of a string in our homework, but it's also something that we do quite frequently in regular programs using Python. When we have a string that has data in it that we need to isolate, but there's no delimiter to separate that data from another piece of data. For example, this 8-digit year is actually quite readable by a human. It's also quite readable by a machine. You can see it represents September 5th, 2018. But what's challenging, or initially challenging about it, is that we can't use a delimiter. We can't say read until the comma. We can't split on a comma, split on a space. So while the data is actually pretty easily readable by humans, we're going to need to use a different method to separate the pieces, as we're doing here with year, month, and day. Now, what I normally ask my students to do when I first bring this out is to look at the numbers that are involved. First, understand that the 0 represents the first character. So this line 0 is the 2 that we see in the first character of the string. Now look carefully at this slice. We call this string slicing. And a string slice is one that really basically it's what it says. It is chopped up or sliced by position. So what we're hoping to do here is slice out the 2018, the 09, and the 05. In order to separate out the year, month, and day from this date. And we're doing that through string slicing. Now again, string slicing slices a string by position, which means we're saying, please take out these 4 characters, please take out these 2 characters, please take out these other 2 characters, and place them in these other variables, string variables in year, month, and day. The question is, do the numbers make sense to you? First, begin with the one concept. That's really the primary concept, one of 2 really, when you're looking at slices. And that is first, the very first idea is that strings index their characters starting at 0. That means that 0 is the 2, subscript 1 is the 0, etc. Now what we're looking at in lines 6, 7, and 8 is not subscripting, but rather what we call slicing, which means taking out a series or a sequence of these items from the sequence. In other words, from the string, we're taking these characters from the string based on position. Now what I'd like you to do is look at this, pause the video, take a look at the numbers and see if you can make sense of the numbers based on their position. For example, the 0 corresponds to 2. The 4 here corresponds to 0, 1, 2, 3. That 0 right there, that's the 4. And actually, let me just change this real quick so we have slightly different numbers there. The 6, for example, that corresponds to the 1. Why? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is 6 right here. That's the 6 character. Now what I'd like you to do is look at the rest of the slice and see if the second number makes sense to you. Pause the video and give it a shot. Okay. Now, what you've probably noticed is that the upper number, the second number there, which we call the upper bound, the second number doesn't seem to make sense if we assume, as we should, that the string index is starting at 0. So again, I could put the indices right here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Actually, I've never done that before, and that makes perfect sense. Those are the indices for this string. Great. Okay. What about the year? What we're getting back is 2018. What we're seeing, though, is the bounds 0 and 4. Now, the 0 makes sense, but what about the 4? Well, the 4 is pointing to the character just above the 8. And yet what we're getting back is 2018, even though we're saying 0 to 4. If you say 0 to 4, it seems like it ought to be 20180, but it's not. All right, let's see if that's similar with the next slice. The 4 to 6 gives us these three. That should be 091, but instead it's 09. Looks like the same rule applies. It is starting on the right index, and yet it seems to be ending one above the index of the last character in the resulting string. That is, it ends on the 1, and yet our string ends on the 9. And then we have 6 and 7, and then, oops, there is no 8. Now that's even worse, or seemingly worse, but it seems to be following the same rule. The first index is the correct index starting at 0 of the beginning of the string that we're slicing out. And the second number, the upper bound, is one above the character that we're going to end up with. So this is actually the feature here, not the bug. This is actually working as expected. The upper bound is something we call non-inclusive. And what that means is that the second index that you see there, in the case of the year, the 4, the second index is the character that will not be included, the non-inclusive upper bound. That is the character that marks the end. This is the 2018, that's the whole thing. 1 is sort of like the bumper. It's sort of like saying, don't go this far. This is the character that you don't include. So we're getting everything up to, but not including the 5th character, the 4 index. And that is working with all 3 of these, including the non-existent 8 index. Give me everything from 6 up to, well, not including 8. And there is no 8, but that's fine. It's still not going to include it, and it'll get 1 and 5. And in fact, we can even take off the very beginning of the string and the very ending of the string. In the case of :4, we're saying from the beginning to, but not including the 4 index. And in the case of 6: we're saying, give me everything from the 6 index up to the end of the string. So that's how slices work, and that will fit into our homework as well.